Hello everyone, it's Ty. The second half of Star Rail 4.2 is almost here, and there's a Husbando rerunning that I've twice missed making a recommendation for. So, determined not to let him pass me by again, today we're going to go into a brief overview of kit and playstyle, light cone and gear options, and give my free-to-play Husbando recommendation for our favorite Charmony Dove lover, Sunday. Sunday was our first, and still only, Harmony Husbando. Well, if you don't count Harmony Trailblazer. At release, everyone thought he was going to be meta-defining, coming at the end of version 2 with a kit specifically designed for buffing characters with summons, and version 3 introducing an entire new path based on summons. It really seemed like a no-brainer. In the end, though, that never really happened. Yeah, Aglaya liked him, but the rest of the Remembrance roster was basically just a clique with Hyacine as the Regina George around which they all buzzed. But we're not here for a Remembrance history lesson, so let's move right along. Sunday's playstyle is all about hyper-carry buffing. He uses his skill on a single target to 100% action advance them, give them a 30% damage buff, 20% crit rate from his talent, and cleanse a debuff due to his major traits. What makes him unique is that if the target has a summon, the damage bonus on his skill is increased to 80%, and the action advance will also advance the summon. No more waiting 3 cycles for Lightning Lord to finally get his turn. All the while, Sunday remains SP neutral, gaining 1 SP whenever he uses his skill on the Beatified, or even SP positive if you have his signature. Beata what now? Right. Yeah, sorry, got a bit ahead of myself. His ultimate applies the Beatified buff to a single target and their summon, giving crit damage bonus based on Sunday's own crit damage value for 3 of Sunday's turns. It also gives the target 20% energy, but if that 20% is less than 40, his major trace rounds it up to 40 energy. So basically, he just gives everyone 40 energy, because there are only a handful of characters in the game with an energy pool large enough for it to matter. So, a very simple and very strong kit, even at E0. He doesn't even really need much vertical investment, beyond his signature anyway. His E1 is pretty good, a 16% def ignore for the target of his skill, and if that target has a summon, then the summon gains 40% def ignore of its own. E2 is kinda meh. The 30% damage for Beatified is nice and all, but there are so many damage bonuses flying around these days, and his S1 itself gives 45%. So the 30% is just objectively worse for significantly more pull investment. Plus, the 2 SP is honestly more insulting than it is useful, especially if you have S1, which constantly gives skill points. E4 gives a little bit of extra energy to speed up his ult cycle, but is honestly meaningless in light of everywhere else that he gains energy, particularly if you have his S1. And his E6 is alright. More crit rate from his talent and a crit rate to crit damage overflow conversion that's honestly quite good, but really not so amazing as to warrant trying to get him to E6. So maybe you sense where I'm going with this. He's definitely worth getting since he's literally the only Husbando Harmony character that isn't HMC. Plus, he's pretty evergreen. No matter what Husbandos come out next, they'll almost certainly benefit from what he does. So, my free-to-play Husbando recommendation would be to get him to E1 S1, but at an absolute minimum, get him E0 S1. While the full power of his E1 does need a character with a summon, like Jingyuan, being able to give anyone a 16% def ignore is still very strong. And if you at least have Teng Huang, or Permanence or Terre, you can take full advantage of the E1, since the dragon given to the bondmate counts as a summon for the bondmate. Now, you could go to E2 if you really want, but as mentioned, his S1 gives a 45% damage bonus, where the E2 only gives 30%. So you'd want to at least have his S1 before even thinking about it. And even then, I think you'd be best served with using your pulls elsewhere. And you certainly wouldn't want to bother going beyond E2, as nothing past E2 is worth the pulls it would take to get it. But, without a doubt, you want his signature, a grounded ascent. With it, he gains so much energy every time he uses his skill or ult that he'll often end up getting his ult well before he even needs it, giving him permanent uptime. He also gains a skill point every time he uses 2 instances of skill or ultimate, making him a veritable SP factory. And of course, you can't go wrong with that extra 45% damage bonus to your hyper carry. But there are alternatives if you must. The standard banner Bronya signature, but the battle isn't over, is basically the store brand version of his signature. It's very similar, but just worse in every way. It has energy regen, but it's given as energy regeneration rate, so it only applies when you would normally get energy regen. It has SP recovery, but only when he ults, and it has a 2 ult cooldown, so it's significantly less frequent. And it gives a 30% damage buff to the target of his skill, but the buff only lasts for a single turn. So, sure, you can use it if you don't have anything else, but you really ought to get his signature. Beyond that, it really doesn't matter what you use on him. The biggest draw of his signature and the Bronya signature is the energy regen and the SP, and no other free-to-play light cone option offers anything even approaching that. The closest might be meshing cogs, but you'll only get the regen from taking damage, because if you're ever using Sunday's basic attack, something has gone very wrong. Of course, as a Harmony character, he has access to Dance Dance Dance, if you've actually been lucky enough to get any copies anyway. The party-wide action advance is well documented as being incredibly useful, but it may require a bit more strategic planning when playing, since you'd have to start juggling 2 action advances and their effects on your turns. So yeah, just do yourself a favor and get his signature. It is, without a doubt, the best thing you can do for him. Abrupt gear transition! His best in slot is undoubtedly 4-piece Sacerdos. The set was literally made for him, giving him a good bit of speed and increasing the crit damage of his target by another 36%. I could mention 4-piece Hackerspace or 2-piece speed combos as options, but it's probably best if you just not think about that at all and use Sacerdos. For planers, your best option is Lushaka. He absolutely wants an energy regen set, and since his whole deal is hypercarry single target buffing, adding some extra attack to that single target is completely on brand. Of course, he's also useful for characters who don't necessarily need attack, so you can use one of the other ER sets if you'd like, but with Von Whack only being useful the once, and Penacony only being useful with other imaginary teammates, Lushaka's just the best by process of elimination. Besides, if you're, for instance, running Mide or Blade who don't need the attack, but you are using Jiao Cho or RMC as support, or Luocha or Teng Huang as sustain, you can just put one of them in the first slot to receive that attack buff. As long as someone benefits from the attack, it's doing its job. His super simple stat requirements make him a breeze to gear. For main stats, he wants a crit damage body, speed boots, an energy regen rope, and his orb can be anything that has good substats, but ideally defense or HP. For substats, you'll only need to focus on crit damage and speed, but some effect res, defense percent, and HP percent can come in handy. And that's it. Super simple. As far as team options, Sunday's basically useful everywhere to the point that your teams will be fighting for him, but a couple of standout pairings do come to mind. Jingyuan loves Sunday, but you'll want to be careful or he will effectively kidnap him. Once you start using Sunday with Jingyuan, you will never be able to play him without Sunday ever again. Teng Huang, or Permancer Teray, also has a wonderful synergy with Sunday. Whoever gets set as the bondmate is considered as having a summon, so they gain the full strength of Sunday's skill. Plus, since the summon gets action advanced, Teng Huang's shields refresh even more frequently. And, of course, the double team of using Jingyuan and Teng Huang, a symphony of synergy. Beyond them, it's literally anyone who wants to be hyper-carried, wants to be batteried, and or wants to be action advanced. Anaxa, Mide, Blade, Ratio, even Ashvale if you're using him like that. And he even has some clever gimmicky uses, like having Sunday give energy and action advance to Elation MC so that he can power up Superwolf, for example. The sky is the limit, really. And of course, our hypercarry king, Finon, absolutely adores him. Everything Sunday does is a targeted buff, so Finon gets Core Flames. And since Sunday's ult gives energy, Finon gains 2 Core Flames when it's used on him. Plus, action advancing Finon means he can use his skill regularly for 2 more Core Flames. Sunday is fantastic for Finon. If you can manage to tear him away from Jingyuan, anyway. It's been nearly a year and a half since Sunday first released, and while even a number of Harmony waifus have fallen off in that time, Sunday has managed to remain incredibly strong. Not only is he a top-tier hypercarry buffer, he is the best limited Harmony Husbando in the game, and that's likely to remain true for a long time to come. Unless, of course, they release some new amazing Harmony Husbando, but what are the chances of that? So, will you be getting your first Sunday on his rerun? Maybe finally getting his S1 or E1? Let me know down in the comments. And that's my Sunday guide. Still trying for breezy, still ended up wordy, but hopefully it was still informative and or entertaining. Either way, you seem to have made it this far, so thank you so much for watching. If you like this sort of thing, please like and subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when I etc. etc. If you have any questions or I didn't cover something, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer them. Anywho, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all again next time. Bye!